Good evening. How are you? Well, they tell me it's 90, and it feels more comfortable than yesterday when it was 88. So, who knows? But what they do know is that we are having a hell of a heat attack, and we're looking to score the highest numbers in this heat attack. And Southwest is probably going to come out the worst today. But then the heat is going to move toward the east. I don't know where it's going to get us, but we have hit 100. And the question is, how many places have hit or gone over 100 that historically have not gone that way? One of the questions is whether or not in Death Valley the heat will exceed 134. Can you imagine 134 degrees? It's only a dry heat. Well, at that point, there's no such difference between dry, wet, or anything else. There's just pain and suffering and great risk. It is possible that they'll only hit 128. There are 14 states out there with heat warnings. I'm getting a little dust. Isn't that perfect? And so people have to be very careful. And I say this to myself as well. I know I'm out, I'm walking, and I'll run part of the way. And I'm not going to try to talk while I run. But we have to be very careful. As people have reminded me, hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. You know, for years, I'd go in to see a doctor for an annual checkup, and somebody say something like, "You're dehydrated." And I didn't make the connection to, yeah, drink more water. We're mostly water. So a guy like me who's on the Soil and Water Board, elected to be so, you think would get the message. But so if I'm dull, don't you be. Drink water, please. It is one of the best things you can do for yourself, even if you're in an air-conditioned house, because you'll go out and put yourself at risk. And, you know, yesterday I didn't notice that I was sweating, but it's really good if you do sweat, because it's your body trying to equalize the temperature. If you're not doing that, you don't have enough water, then you're at risk. Okay, so end of my unpaid political announcement or safety warning. In terms of turning the heat up, it's remarkable to me that we could have a candidate like Trump go around having been indicted, speaking, for example, of Smith as deranged and psycho, and not have a direction from the court. Now, on the one hand, this trash talk is just that. If he weren't indicted, if that prosecutor were not going to be standing in a courtroom prosecuting him, and or people on his team doing it, and I don't know if he is trying it or not. I have the sense that Smith can try the case, meaning has the ability and the skill and has been practicing continuously. So we shouldn't have a fear about that. Other decisions he may make, we can question. He is, of course, inside the belly of the beast, and he knows things that we may not know, like a motion to recuse Loose Cannon, the judge down in Florida. So what happens when we do nothing? Well, you think by now you'd get it. Everybody would get it. That is to say, when you don't mark that this is unacceptable, it becomes acceptable, and more people do it and get away with it. So what are we inviting? We're inviting chaos and violence. We're inviting other people to show disrespect for people undeserving, and to show the disrespect in another way, not just talking. And that's just not acceptable. And we have to meet that head on. The notion that anything a person says that you disagree with is fighting words is a new dimension in America. It is a defense in a criminal case. Somebody says fighting words, and you can think of various ways to say it, and I'm not going to repeat it, but, you know, racial epithets, things that I'm going to do to your wife or your mother or so forth, which is a kind of classic, mostly joke among juvenile delinquents in the concrete streets of the city of New York. But what Trump is doing is our fighting words. And he seeks to provoke not the person that he's trying to hurt, but his people. And he's also saying this publicly, so it's affecting a jury pool that's seeing all of this. Now, last night, he gave a speech that, Trump, gave a speech that went on for, as it was reported, I didn't listen to it, 99 minutes. I did listen to part of it that was replayed with apologies by MSNBC. And he apologized for playing anything that Trump said, but he thought it was important, Velshi thought it was important to hear what Trump basically said about what he was going to do when president. You know, he's going to affect the schools, he's going to go after those people, he's going to clear them out, he's going to prosecute them, he's going to do everything. A Hitlerian rimshot, I would say. And this is not acceptable. This kind of speech from a former president, even a hoodlum like Trump, is very dangerous in an open society that thinks, because of the position he had, and that he still pretends that he should be in that position, is worthy of respect and imitation or action. So we just can't have this thing going on in America. But it is. And it will continue unless and until prosecutors, hear this, Jack Smith, and judges, hear this, Judge Cannon. If you don't act upon it, then it will persist. He will be encouraged. He will do more of it. I was in Munich a long time ago, 1969, and I made it a point to go to places where Hitler had been. I wanted to see the place, and like any inspired, curious young man, I read Shire's book on the rise and fall of the Third Reich, and it was fascinating. And I also read Mein Kampf, because I'd read that Churchill had read it, nobody else had, and his complaint to all the other people who were busy appeasing Hitler was that he said what he's going to do. If you just read it, he says it right there. Well, and our version of Hitler is doing the same thing right now. But I went to the Hofbrauhaus in Munich, München, to get a feel of what the room was like and how this could be, over the years, reflective of anything that it was like before. Well, Trump believes in this method. That's what he's doing. When he goes out on the stump, like last night particularly, he's testing out his message. Will I get away with it? Will they stop me? Can I go further? Can I own this thing? That's what's going on. And there are commentators telling us that, but no one wants to believe it. That can't happen here. And the example that's often given is it's like you're sitting in a boiling pot, and it doesn't start out boiling though. It slowly gets hotter and hotter, sort of like our weather. But politically, it's a parallel. And in this political parallel, it's like we don't notice it. And people say, you know, accepting a new normal. And the new normal is this phenomenon that we allow more and more violence to be acceptable, things to happen. You know, the old speech about Germany given by a reverend, which was that, you know, they came for the Jews, I did nothing. They came for this group and that group and the other group. And finally they came for me, and there was no one to help me. That's who Trump is. Trump is that person. Trump is that kind of leader. Trump is close enough in age to the point where he will extinguish someday. Gratefully, he will be a person who is beaten in the polls before or at the presidential election. But I think for him, the end of his life game is somewhat like Putin's and these other autocrats. You know, to make a big historic killing, maybe literally, and then to pass from this world with people crazy for you. I don't understand it. And most people, I think the older they get, the more they think life is more about friends, family, taking a walk on a road with beautiful trees, things like that. That's what life is really about. And you have your warrior years, 20s into 30s, and then From that, you build a wisdom body, and you do something good with it. You do something creative. You do something for others with it. It could only be your family. It might be the animals that live in your apartment or on a farm. That's what life is about. But Trump's not about those things. Trump is in the winning game, the accretion game. Money, fame, power, women, boys, who knows? I'm just joking about boys. There's no story that he's done that. But there are stories about him enjoying younger women on Epstein's place. So this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a felon. We're dealing with a guy who doesn't give a damn about ordinary values. And there's only the one thing he can do, which is try to extraordinarily stretch out his power. I got a kick out of a column by George Will. I've always liked George, even in disagreement. And years ago, we had much more disagreement. But now, he believes, rightly so, that Trump is a menace. And he wrote a column today saying he didn't think Trump or DeSantis would make the final chapter in this presidential election year. And he said that the fact that everybody's already declaring Trump the winner of the nomination and DeSantis is moving into second place, he says, that doesn't mean anything. Our expectations are often dashed by events that are unforeseen, and all of a sudden you're in a whole different game. And he says it's one of the expressions is it's kind of like cheat the prophet, the person who says this is going to happen and then it never does. As I make a fair number of predictions myself, I try to be humble about it, meaning as strong as you can make a statement, but not ridiculous. And Trump is in a different camp. And the way George Will describes him as Trump is on his crybaby crusade. And I like that because I think it fits him. He's always been the man-child. He's always the victim. He's always a coward. Sure, I'm sure he beat up kids in the neighborhood who weighed half as much as he did and were younger. And that's the kind of person he is. Bully, hater, and we are allowing him to grow like a cancer on the entire nation. And if we don't stop him on his crybaby crusade, we'll have this jerk in the White House again doing even worse things that he's talking about on his Hitlerian rally career. So that's what I have to say today. And I'm glad I'm out here on a 90-degree day that feels more like 82 in my cathedral of trees. So have a good day, and I'll try to see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.